This topic I'm probably going to touch on again, if not a few times actually, because it was a massive topic throughout the entire time period with Cecilia. I want to talk about astral travel. Now, I was no stranger to knowing about astral travel before I had met Cecilia, so I pretty much knew what it involved and what it was, although I never actually knew how to do it myself, but I'd known enough about it. So it wasn't a strange new bizarre concept that I needed to wrap my mind around. But now this topic spreads in so many directions concerning Cecilia. And some scenarios I'm going to relate are questionable. I'm not sure if they really did or didn't happen. And some scenarios I cannot for the life of me disprove, because there is no other way to explain them away. And also at the same time, in the ones I can't disprove, I mean, I know astral travel enough, or about it enough, to know that it is legitimate to have actually happened. So I think the first thing I should talk about is the ones that I can't disprove. Now, there were countless scenarios. Like I said, everything about Cecilia was bombarded into your life from day one. And aside from the whole werewolf scenario and Cecilia's health scares and potentially dying on a every minute by minute basis, astral travel was, and also her DID, astral travel was definitely one of the major topics, one of the constant topics, non-stop topics. Whenever Ria or myself, mostly Ria and myself, would leave Cecilia's house, Cecilia always told us that she or one of her parts or a bulk amount of her parts would astral back with us because they felt safe with us. And I'm definitely going to cover this in a couple of notes, but her parts felt safe enough with us. We also were amusing to them. There were various reasons why they would astral with us, or astral to be with us. But the one topic specifically that I cannot disprove is the times or the things that would happen when I would leave Cecilia's house, when I would leave Cecilia. Aside from already having mentioned in another note that Cecilia just already knew things that I had never told her or never told anybody else, this goes alongside with it, I guess, as well. If I went to the shops or did anything after having met Cecilia, now up until this point I've already related that Cecilia already just knew things about me, things that had happened to me since I was a child, things that had happened long before I'd even met her, that nobody knew. And but now, after having met Cecilia and having been introduced to the supposed fact, I would put fact in inverted commas because, like I said, I can't disprove some of these things. That Cecilia and her parts would astral to follow me or to be with me, and Ria, sometimes the other people in her group, I would be told the very next day about the things that that I had done, or the places I had gone to. I mean, silly example, I would go to the shops and I would buy a specific item of clothing, and I would get home and suddenly I'd receive a text message relating exactly where I had been to and what I had just bought. There was no time period in which for me to actually have even told anybody, and I had been alone. And it was how do you just, how do you explain that away? And this happened often, too often, actually. Whatever I did, wherever I went, I felt like I was under a constant radar or a constant camera with my every move watched. It was rather strange. But I mean, time after time, I was told, often, the same day, if not the very next day at the most, about the things that had happened. And there is no way to explain this away, because I could reason it away for somebody else, if it was about somebody else, because maybe they forgot that they had told someone. But for me, I know what goes on in my life, and I cannot explain these things away, because I even, at some points, purposely wanted to see this whole Astralling thing and how much was related, through all of it and after all of it. So I would purposely go do something and then purposely not say anything and wait to see if I was then told what had happened. Or if nothing was said to me, I would then ask a random question like, did you come with me yesterday? And then I would get everything related back to me in extreme accuracy. There was absolutely no reason for me to not believe that Cecilia and her parts, her supposed DID parts, could astral. There is no ways to disprove this. And then the other, even more bizarre and frequent scenarios that happened when I was at home. There would be, I would be working on my computer, and my computer that stage was a proper PC, not a laptop, and it was, PC being plugged into the wall, and the specific plug that this PC had, you had to really fight with this plug to get it out of the wall socket. So I was very involved in my work, frustrated actually with my work, because I was battling with the job that I was working on, and it was taking much longer because I was battling. And next minute my computer goes off. Instinctively and immediately I thought, okay, the power tripped, because it's not unknown for South Africa and it's also somewhat normal, and logically also your first thought. The power trip, that's why the computer went off, and also obviously, oh my gosh, I've just lost everything, so frustration through it all. And then going to check the electrical box, checking the wall lights, everything was still working. Everything was still on. Completely confused. I eventually thought, okay, maybe there's a fault with the computer. So I went to go check the wires. The PC plug that was in the wall, the one that you had to really battle with and fight with to get out of a wall socket, I used to struggle to get that plug out of the wall socket. It was completely unplugged. And when it happened, I was completely alone. It was maybe not even 4 feet away from where I was sitting. And then, shortly after I discovered this plug, realized, and also obviously knew by this point that little astrals, meaning Cecilia's younger DID parts, would follow me, and her older ones as well. Supposed, I should always use the word supposed, but obviously I then wondered, did they do this? Because how else do you get this plug out of the wall? And I put it back into the wall socket, and next minute I received a text message saying that Anya was getting frustrated because all you do is work all day, so she unplugged your computer. Cecilia did not know that the computer was unplugged. She did not know. I had not, well, put it this way, I had not said anything to anybody because I was too busy trying to figure out what was going on. How did she know? And also, how did the plug come out of the wall socket? How do you explain that away? Another weird scenario, and this gets weirder. Now, bearing in mind, everyone in Cecilia's group was told that Cecilia had a vast majority of very young DID parts, and as all kids, or as most kids do at least, they love toys and teddy bears and so on. So everyone that was actually quite close into Cecilia's group carried a fair amount of teddy bears with them, or had them in their homes, specifically on their beds. I know Miranda would carry teddy bears with her in her bag, in her car. It was actually quite ridiculous. I had teddy bears, but I had always had teddy bears actually, so I didn't go and get new ones like everybody else. I had teddy bears in my bedroom. So Cecilia's little ones supposedly loved playing with them, and we were all told, everyone in Cecilia's group was told that Cecilia's little DID parts would astral into the actual teddy bears because they felt safe that way, because they could hide there. And this was a very normal scenario, a very normal thought, a normal thing that just happened every single day. And also, bearing in mind that we were always told, what teddy bears we had. Okay, obviously with Miranda, I mean, she carried them with her, so it was easy to, say what teddy bear she had. But for the ones that I had at home, Cecilia had never seen them, at least physically, but they were related to me. Like, what I had had and what they looked like and so on. But now this is the weird part. Cecilia, before I carry on, sometimes Cecilia's older DID parts would also apparently astral into the teddy bears for safety's sake. Now, by this specific time point, I had this one fairly large teddy bear. He was probably 1/2 meter in height. And I was told when I'm at home, if I go sit by the TV, or, if I'm not working but I'm at home, just carry that teddy bear with me, because the little ones, that's what the younger parts were referred to as, like to feel that someone was holding them. They like the comfort and those things. So, more often than not, I would carry this teddy bear to the TV with me. And I still shake my head on this scenario because it was very strange, and at that time point I was still living with my parents, and I was talking, in this one scenario that I'm going to relate now, I was talking to my brother while I was holding this teddy bear on my lap. And while we are in this discussion, looking at each other with this teddy bear on my lap, next minute the teddy bear's leg kicks up while I am sitting completely still. No movement, no reason for movement, no cause for movement, absolutely no reason that this teddy bear's leg should have or could have moved. And it was dramatically moved. The teddy bear's leg completely kicked up a good 20 centimeters at least. I felt the movement. As I looked down, I saw the leg drop. I looked at my brother because I knew what was going on, supposedly knew what was going on. My brother's eyes were big, his jaw had dropped, and he said to me, "Did you see what had just happened? The teddy bear's leg kicked, it moved." And I had to explain this away in some kind of random nonsense reasoning to make it into a joke, because I could not tell him about anything, about what was supposedly really going on. The teddy bear's leg actually moved. How do you explain that away? And this gets even more bizarre now. In my bedroom the one night, my brother yet again is having a conversation. He came into my bedroom. He's standing by the doorway, asking me something. Then we get involved in a deep discussion. Next to him, at a bit of a distance, was a bunch of teddy bears on top of a box. And my bedroom door was closed. No one else was around. And next minute, this one specific teddy bear flies, or gets thrown from the way it looked, gets thrown from this box right up into the air, going towards the ceiling, across the room, and down on the floor. My jaw drops, my eyes are big, my brother looked like he had seen a ghost. I don't think I even explained or tried to come up with a nonsense reasoning to make it into a joke, because I was completely surprised. That was a dramatic enough demonstration of, astralling. I guess you could sway it off to that right now, because how else do you explain that? There is no logical reason for a teddy bear to just randomly look like it had been thrown off of a box that was on a floor up towards the ceiling, across the room, to land on the other side of the bedroom, where there was nobody you could see to have thrown it. Yeah, I don't know how to explain that away. I mean, when I first met the prosecutor for the trial and the advocates, their one question to me was, what can you tell us that is true and what is not true? So I said to them, there's actually 3 categories. I said, I can tell you what is true, which is things that I have seen and not been told by other people. Then I can tell you what's not true, also being things that I have seen and know firsthand that has not been related by other people. And the third category is, I have no fucking idea. And that's where I started to explain the astralling to them. And believe you me, I think the prosecutors felt like they needed to be admitted into a psychiatrist session, because their jaws dropped, their eyes got big. After I related scenario after scenario, they did not know how to explain any of that away either. And I would honestly love to know how to explain that away if it wasn't astralling. At this point, I can say it wasn't Cecilia's DID parts, but because she doesn't have them, but was it Cecilia herself? Or can someone please explain this to me? Because I would like to know, did Cecilia actually speak some truth somewhere in all of this? Which would be surprising to me, but there is no ways any of us could explain astralling away. The other thing I wanted to explain or talk about with regards to astralling is this. I can throw off to, it possibly did not happen. But then again, it could have happened. It could go either way on any of the scenarios that I remember, that I experienced. There is no way to actually, there's no reason for it to actually be valid or invalid, but it could be honestly swayed in either direction. And it's also a combination of talking about dreams. And also, again, a combination of just fed a whole bunch of nonsense. Because you just didn't know any better. So, what I wanted to talk about, which, as far as I know, also happened to Ria, but not nearly as often as it happened to me. Because Cecilia and her parts would so often supposedly follow me home, when I would go sleep at night, apparently as an astral, they would pull me out of my body. They would pull me out as an astral. And then we would end up doing various things. Now, sometimes I would remember strange dreams, meeting different people, seeing different things. Sometimes it was serious stuff, sometimes it was funny stuff. It varied quite extensively, all of which could actually be easily swayed off to dreams, very easily. But then it gets very confusing because often at times, immediately after a scenario like this would happen, I would get a text message, or the same day I would end up seeing Cecilia, or should I say rather the next morning I would see Cecilia, and she would immediately start relating things that I remembered from what I thought was a dream. And each time she would reason it out being, it wasn't a dream, we were astralling. Don't you remember that I pull you out of your body, as an astral, and we go and do stuff? Again, this is a combination of, how does she just know things? Did she really pull me out of my body as an astral? Was it just a dream? This can go in so many different directions that it turns into a mind splat, in all honesty. It is too much to try make sense of, because this mind map on reasons for just this one little topic, or subtopic rather, of this topic, can go in so many different directions with so many different explanations arguing against and for it. And at the same time, it's not actually important whether it ends up being true or not. Although to a degree I would actually like to know if it really did happen or not. But obviously there's no way of me really knowing. It's utterly confusing, it's overwhelming. It's a complete mindfuck. Obviously I will not use that word in the book, but it's a mind splat. It is too much to make sense of, that your mind literally just splats. And that is pretty much, or this pretty much, is a somewhat accurate example of the scenarios and information we were constantly given, because throughout everything with Cecilia and involving Cecilia, the stuff is so intense, so confusing, where you could argue against it and for it, and with topics and subtopics, and the list literally never ended, into a mind map of confusion that looks like something that was put into a blender that you cannot make sense of. That at the end of the day, it became way too much, that you just ultimately gave up trying to make sense of it and just accepted what you were told. Because by that point, as far as you knew, Cecilia, this was normal for Cecilia. It was her supposed life. So since we couldn't make sense of it, because this was not something we were used to, then it's easier to just believe somebody who it was normal for. It was supposedly part of her life, what she grew up with. It's like going to a doctor. You don't know everything medical-wise. And you could try and make sense of things and try come up with things and try to do research and come to your own conclusions. But then when you go to a doctor, it's their field of study, their field of practice. This is what they're used to. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I know there are some people that argue still with doctors, but the vast majority of people ultimately take the doctor at his word, because this is his field of expertise. And similar being that all the things that we were told, everything that we experienced and supposedly experienced, and everything else that went on, this was Cecilia's supposed field of expertise. And we were just newbies. We were amateurs. We had absolutely no idea about any of this. And even if we had some knowledge of some topics, we still were not experienced like Cecilia was supposedly experienced. So even in the utter confusion and chaos of trying to make sense of things, it was so much easier, even though, okay, I can't speak for everybody in the group, but even though, we didn't want to take the easy way out, it was just simpler and made more sense just to accept what you were told and the information you were given and the explanations you were given by somebody who knew about all this stuff, than trying to figure it out yourself and just getting all messed up inside and overwhelmed. And this is one of the main things Cecilia used over everybody. She made herself an expert in everything. And that's not an understatement. I will cover that in another topic, but Cecilia supposedly knew everything, and she would always give evidence to back everything up, supposed evidence anyway. So why would we need to question her when this was second nature for her, like second skin? Yeah.